All right. And welcome, Dr. Patty, to a Cup of Clarity podcast.
Hi, so happy to be here. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a while, I know, since we've seen each other. I know we follow each other on social media, so I'm always seeing you one way or another, but not physically
I
here
know.
together. Before we get started, Dr. Patty, I always like to ask, what is it that you are grateful for today?
And I love this question because I'm actually very grateful to be here with you today. I think it's wonderful that we're able to connect in this way. We've connected other times. So I think it's so wonderful. And I'm grateful for your podcast and that you invited me to be here. Um,
Thank you. You are such an expert in your field. I know you are a double boarded psychiatrist and you're a mental wellness expert. And I love that you have a real passion for wellness and that finding that balance and helping your patients out with that. We all need that these days more than ever, I think. And you do that, I know, through some holistic practices that you integrate along with your
mhm.
evidence-based type modalities as well. Tell us a little bit, Dr. Patty, about your background and just your story.
So, I always, and it's going to sound like a cliche because I always knew I wanted to help people, right? Doesn't everybody say that? And I just didn't know how it was going to be. I wanted to be a doctor, I wanted to be a physician, but I never knew or thought that it would be in the mental health space or mental wellness. And so, when I was doing, you're in medical school and you're doing all these rounding and you round. And so, I had this one psychiatrist in the emergency room at UM, and he used to be like, "You were born to do this." And I was like, "There's
Mm.
no way I'm doing this." And not because I didn't like it, but because, you think about being a surgeon when you're a doctor, you're going to do this. And then, of course, my parents were paying for school. And it's like, how do I tell them I'm going to be a psychiatrist, Because it's just the connotation that, always we have.
Yes,
And so, I kept pulling away, but the more I was pulled away, the more I really enjoyed it and loved it. And so that's really, life just puts the right people in our lives and to mentor us.
I believe that.
Yeah, and so he was a wonderful mentor, and then I started, my residency, and I just found that treating people holistically was so much more important than just this one thing. And I remember one of my mentors, Dr. Goodman, used to say, you have to treat the entire person. You
Right.
can't cut the person at the head, right? So it's not only that, and it's beautiful because now that I've been in this career over 20 years, and which is like, ouch, I can't believe it's been 20.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that things are changing, and we're looking at the mind gut connection, right? And how our diet has so much to do with our mental well-being, and we're talking about cortisol and stress and all these other things that really have to do. So yeah, it kind of drew me in this direction, and that's how I ended. And I love talking to people, so it was a perfect
It
match.
was a perfect fit. I
Yeah.
love that you said that it's treating others, holistically and treating the whole person
Mhm.
because each individual is a world of their own, whether it's, mind, body, or all of it.
Yeah.
And that cookie cutter approach that I think so many physicians use or psychiatrists use, it's like, okay, you fit into this box.
Right.
This is your protocol, and this is where we're going with this. And I love that you step away from that to a certain extent.
Yeah.
As I was getting ready for our interview, I was doing a little digging. I visited your website, which is great, by the way. I love it.
Thank you.
And I noticed I learned something new about you that I didn't know, and that is that your husband and your children, family, and friends all call you Super Patty. And so, what is? Can you tell us why? What is behind that?
So yeah, that's my quirky side. Before I met my husband, this is my second marriage. I had a daughter from my previous marriage, and she was about 5 or 6. And so I love kids and I love hanging out with children. So I would pick up all the kids, throw them in my car. We'd go to the park, and I'd roll around with them, and I'd always be playing and very engaged and active. And so all the kids started calling me, "You're not Patty, you're Super Patty. That's who you are." And so just the kids would just call me Super Patty every time they pick me up. So I meet my husband. It was actually a blind date, believe it or not. We had a mutual friend. Yeah, yeah, my first and only blind date. And so we met, and he started hearing the kids, calling me Super Patty, and he just started calling me Super Patty. And then everybody was calling me Super Patty. So even some of my colleagues call me Super Patty.
Well, I
But
guess it's an appropriate nickname. And
I love it.
based on all you do too on a daily basis, not just in your career. I know you're very involved with your family, which is a beautiful thing to see.
Thank you. Yeah.
Dr. Patty, you have a quote that caught my attention, and that is, it says, challenges always come with greatness. Do not miss your chance to shine. Tell us about that quote.
I think that there's so much growth when we have challenges in our life, when we go through those difficult moments in our life. There's so much opportunity for growth. And it really depends on how we choose to interpret, right? Or integrate that moment into our lives. So I believe that with anything, and I mean, look at us, look at everybody that's gone through COVID. This is a perfect example of seeing people really coming out on the other side
Yeah.
wonderfully, right? Taking a negative situation and really, starting podcasts, ramping up their websites, deciding that, I want to connect with people on the internet. I want to do all these different things, or really taking their lives into account and saying, am I really happy with what I'm doing? Right? Is this really fulfilling me? Is this really giving me purpose? Which is part of really coming out, on the other side. So
Hmm.
I think taking those the hard moments, learning from them, and just growing. And that's really our best opportunities. We see it in stories, that we read about all the time, like Malaya. Remember that young girl that was shot by the Taliban? Do you remember her? And she won the Nobel
Yes.
Peace Prize when she was
Yes.
17.
Malala, I think is.
Malala, because
Mhm.
she was how wonderful. Look at the wonderful thing that came out of it, right?
Absolutely.
Hopefully none of us have to go through such tragedy, but look how wonderful and how, she decided to take this moment and make it wonderful for her, and it gave her
Yeah.
purpose. So I think that if we look at challenges that we are faced with, and life is like that, there are things that are within our control and things that are not. And
Yeah.
just take those
I
moments
al-
really.
I always like to say too, and I try to integrate it as much as I can. It's not always easy,
It's
but
not. It's
to
not.
say, what is this moment here to teach me? And sometimes it's a little bit in hindsight, after you've had a chance to breathe and maybe you've had a little adult temper tantrum with the situation or you're upset. But I think when we look back and we can say, all right, what
Mhm.
is this here to teach me? What am I here to learn from this? Why has this shown up? And we take a moment to just sort of take
Yeah.
that in. So, what does it mean when we say that someone is resilient? What would you say, Dr. Patty, that are the characteristics of a resilient human being?
So I love talking about resilience, as you probably know.
Yes.
And really, what is resilience? Resilience is that ability of a person to be able to come out and bounce back from a hard situation, right? Come out the other side with more growth and just bounce back, right? So that's just a simple definition. People who are resilient tend to be have self-esteem, take action. They're aware of their strengths.
Mm.
They give themselves, those little wins, right? So you look at your life and you say, okay, maybe everything's not going out perfect, but this
Right.
is my little win, and I'm going to
Hmm.
celebrate that, right? So you have that ability. Definitely, you have to have purpose,
Right.
and you look for that purpose, and that ability to reinvent yourself, to find your why, to really look and see deep down inside, what is it that really makes me happy, and where is it that I want to be, right? So those are some of the things. There's many others. There has to be mindfulness, spirituality, but I think those are kind of the little tidbits that really, you know, help us to be more resilient.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes faith and just trust comes into that as well, knowing again that if sometimes this has come into my life, there's a reason, and just sort of having that inner trust and assurance, confidence within ourselves, I think also helps out a lot. Um, but I'm curious about one thing though. Why is it that some people seem to be more resilient than others? So this is like a little bit of a double question. To what extent is resilience an innate trait? And to what extent is it something that we, like a skill, we can build and learn throughout our lives?
Yeah. So when you look at the research, and there's a lot of work on resilience that's been written, and so when you look at it, it's really people that are more resilient tend to have had role models in their life that were more nurturing. and more resilient themselves. So, and that could have been a parent, it could have been a coach, it could have been a grandparent, a teacher that really gave that person that example, that role model, encouraged them when they did well. And when they failed, they didn't, cause them to feel guilty or feel bad about themselves, but really to learn, how can I do better next time? Right. So the question is never like, why do I always fail or why do I always feel bad? The question should be, how can I do better next time? Or what are the things that I need to maybe improve on? Because you're never going to get a positive response when the question is negative.
Right. True.
Yeah. So people tend to be more resilient when they've had exposure to that than others. Some people tend to be just innate resilient. People like Viktor Frankl. One,
Yes.
that's one of my
Holocaust
favorite,
survivor. Yes.
yes, one of my favorite books. How he was a psychiatrist and he was in a Nazi camp, and how at the gist of the book is, you control the things that you can control, and despite being in a traumatic event, you still have control over yourself and how you
Yes.
respond to it.
Right. It's
Right?
interesting. Our mutual friend and mentor, Jennifer Grace, said
Yeah.
recently, when there's nothing you can do, do nothing. And sometimes you mentioned control, and all we ever want to do is just control the
Yeah.
situation. And
Mhm.
sometimes if we just take a step back and just allow life
Mhm.
to just happen and flow naturally instead of trying to grab, at everything, trying to make it happen.
Yeah,
I
because we
like that you
create
said,
anxiety. I'm sorry, we create
it's
anxiety when we
oh,
do
for
that.
sure,
Mhm.
100%. I'm a witness to that because I grew up with a lot of anxiety and I had to work through that in my own personal life. And you mentioned something that was interesting to me and it caught my attention as a former educator, and that is that our resiliency sometimes, well, mostly comes from our caregivers and our parents. So, how, as parents, can we really extend that lesson of resiliency to our own children, especially from the time they're very little?
Yeah, and I think that's such a wonderful question because it's hard. As parents, I have 4 kids, and none of my kids came with a book under their arm. None of them, no instructions, no instructions needed, right? And so you have them, but what you try to do is you try to encourage them, right? And I've always say, and I tell this to my clients and my patients, it's okay for your kids to fail. There's nothing wrong with children
Yes.
failing. There's nothing wrong with it. It's what we do with that failure. We help them, we encourage them, right? So what happened? How can we do it better? It's okay. You want them to fail when they're little. So when they're
Right.
big, the big failures are able to deal with them.
Right.
So it's things such as encouraging, you know, there should never be shame
Hmm.
when they do fail, right? And
Right.
sometimes we're
And
we gotta go
criticism.
through that. We criticize ourselves. We're the biggest,
We
so
are.
criticizing, shaming, making them feel guilty, like you didn't get that A,
Hmm.
right? I mean, I remember my mother. I was raised like that. If it was an A minus, it just wasn't good enough,
Right.
right? That kind of mentality of, oh my God, I didn't do well enough, and you really, creates anxiety,
It
right?
does.
For the next time, you're like, oh my, you second guess yourself. Am I going to be able to do well?
Right.
Right.
And we
So,
grow up, I think, with that whole hashtag, I gotta hustle for
yeah,
everything and I gotta work harder. And it sets us up in a cycle
yeah, yeah.
all the
And
time.
it's kind of those things that are kind of taught to us that then we have even we talk about that, but money too, right? So money
Mm,
doesn't grow on trees, and and so you think, oh my God, money's limited, and
right. Scarcity mentality.
yeah, it really limits our ability to do things, or our fear of failure. And then because we're so afraid, we don't take that step and say, you know what, I am dreaming of doing this. And why shouldn't I be able to do it? Right.
Right. That's a
So I
great
think,
point.
yeah, yeah.
Teach them while they're little and let them fail while they're little
It's
in a but giving them that positive space to be able to do it and say, all right, maybe teaching them, what did you learn from this? That's okay. You know what? Next time you'll do better.
right.
Next time you'll know how to make it happen.
And I'm here to support you.
Right.
Right.
So
So
important.
yeah, so with my kids, you want your kids to do well, obviously. And of course, I'm no different than any other mother. So, one time, I had told my son, perfect example, I would tell him, don't forget your homework. You need to do this. and don't forget, and do not tell me at the last minute you need a poster board. I'm sure everybody's heard this. And so he did it. Now he was old enough, he was in sixth grade, and he told me at 6 o'clock, in the evening. And I said, well, you know what? I'm really sorry. You're going to have to tell your teacher tomorrow that you were not responsible and you did not tell your mom. And he's like, I can't do that. I go, no, you be honest. You have to be honest. I've told you, time and time again, and it breaks your heart. Like your
Right.
heart is like, because you can run out to Walgreens,
Exactly.
and you can buy it, and then maybe you
Sure.
can learn the lesson tomorrow. But I thought at that moment it was important for him to learn that lesson. And he told his teacher, and his teacher said, okay, you bring it tomorrow. I'm going to take away
Okay.
certain points, but you can bring it tomorrow for being honest. So it was a
Yeah.
double lesson, right?
It's so easy to get caught up as a parent.
Yeah.
I've done it just the same to rescue your children, and you want to rescue them from
You
everything, from
do,
every
you
hurt,
do.
from every pain, from every little bit, but we don't realize that that is then hurting them in a worse way because we're not allowing them to be resilient and to learn responsibility, and like in your son's case.
Yeah. And I see it with my patients, right? I see, young adults that have no coping skills. I
Hmm.
had one patient that, struggled with an eating disorder, and she was in law school in an Ivy League. This is a very high achieving young woman, which I adore. Her mother would call her. When I found out her mother would call her to wake her up for class, I said, no, this needs to stop.
Yeah.
So you don't want your child to, but at what point? Are you going to call her for the bar exam? Are you going to call her for a trial?
Right.
When does this stop, right?
Sure.
So yes, we want to help our children, but it should be age appropriate, right?
That's a great point. Absolutely age appropriate. So, have you had a moment in your personal life that really tested your resilience
Yes.
that you can
And
think of or share with us?
yeah. I'm pretty much an open book. So 2008 was a really terrible time. My husband is in real estate, and we really went through a difficult financial moment during that time. I think everybody, did in the country, and our family wasn't any different. And so it was interesting because, you have friends, or so you thought, and we would go to parties, and we would have people over our house, and as soon as we had our financial crisis, personal financial crisis, nobody invited us anymore.
Wow.
It was like we did not exist. I was heartbroken. I was heartbroken because I was like, I thought these people were my friends, and
Mm.
and and it took, like you said, like a little, a tantrum, and I did a little
How
tantrum.
dare they?
How dare they? And why would they do this to me? But you know what? I said, okay, what is this moment teaching me? Right. And then I looked at the universe, and I said, one of my meditations, I said, you know what? God is cleaning the way,
Mm.
because I'm going to come out of this somehow.
Right.
I'm not sure how, but we'll figure it out. Um, and when we do come out of it, we're going to clear all this junk away. All these people that were really, not true friends. They
Right.
were false people, people that just really, you know, didn't really care about us, just cared about the fact that, we had them over for barbecues or whatever it was, you know. And so I chose to look at it that way. It's hard. I'm not going to say it was
Mm.
easy, because it was hard. It was very, very hard,
Sure.
very,
It
very
hurts.
challenging. It hurts. It hurts, And so I probably think that was probably one of my most challenging moments, when you really step back and you really feel alone. You really, really feel alone. Yeah.
But I'm willing to bet, because I know how God and the universe works, that you were gifted with brand new, wonderful people that really care about you and are there for
Absolutely.
you
Absolutely.
100% of the way, right?
And family was always there. I'm very blessed to have a
Yeah.
beautiful family. I have siblings that are amazing, and cousins. And so those people are always there. And that's why, at the end of the day, the people that really mattered were the ones that were there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I have an interesting thing I want to share with you, because I remember, and this was a little story of resilience on your
Mhm.
end, when we were doing a women's summit together. I don't know if you remember
Oh,
this, and
yes,
you
of
were
course. That was
on the boat in
last
a
summer.
marina last summer in July. We were on a 3-day summit, a virtual summit, and you were the boat, you guys were, I think, headed to the Bahamas or
Mhm.
something the
We're in the
next
Bahamas.
day.
Yes, good
You were
memory.
parked at the marina. I'll never forget this, 'cause that was the first kind of interaction you and I had. It was virtually, but nonetheless, I
Yeah.
had a lot of respect for you after that. All of a sudden, the lights went out on the marina, and you were literally doing your piece. It was your
The
turn
dark.
to present in the dark. And you just went on. I could just hear your voice as if nothing was happening, totally undisturbed. And I thought, that is one resilient woman. I don't know if I would have been that calm. I would have been, somebody find the lights. It was great. So to me,
Oh,
that was like kudos to you. And it was just a little moment that as I was preparing for the interview, I said, oh, gosh, I remember that with Patty. That was
thank
wonderful.
you. Thank you. Yeah, that was interesting. That was interesting. Yeah, I mean, you just have to keep going and you just say, you know what? Well, if I were to stop or freeze or cry, it's not going to change anything.
Nope.
The lights are not going to come up,
Nope.
automatically, right? Um,
Yeah.
just let's go with the flow and see what happens. And
Yeah.
all you can do is say, "I'm so sorry." No control over the lights.
Yep. Yeah.
You know.
And I think you were having spotty Wi-Fi to boot.
Oh yeah. Imagine the Bahamas during COVID.
Yeah. So I am curious also, does resiliency vary based on the situation we may be facing? Is it like, are we more able to be resilient in some cases and not in others?
Everybody's different, and I think it just depends on those skills. And I think it's like a muscle, right? Resiliency is like a muscle. So
Mm,
the more we practice it, I think the more resilient we become. And we all have these visceral responses to certain things. So we really need to stop and sit back and ask ourselves, why am I responding? If it's something that you're really responding out of the ordinary, you're not really being as resilient as you would normally be. You need to ask yourself, why am I responding this way? What is this triggering in me? And then really look at the situation and say, what is the situation really about? Right? You
mm,
need to step back and say, what is it really? What's the truth? Because we sometimes get overwhelmed with the situation. Um, I'll give you an example. I have a colleague that I work with, and and he was really triggering me. And I'm usually a pretty zen, pretty happy person. I'm always laughing. That's one of my things that I love to do, which I'll share with you guys. And I love to laugh with people and joke and stuff. And he was really triggering me. And I'm thinking, what's going on? And so I really had to step back and I said, okay, what is the truth about this situation? And what am I adding emotionally to this situation?
mm.
Right. And so it's really being honest with yourself. And I think that's why sometimes we respond well under certain circumstances, and other times we just don't. So it's really practicing those things, right? What are my strengths? Some of the exercises I tell some of my clients is, write a list of your strengths. Know your strengths. Know what you're really good at, right?
Right.
That's so important because we sometimes forget what our strengths are. And I bet if you were to ask anyone, you probably think, well, I really don't have so many strengths. I really don't know what my strength is. But as a coach, you probably see somebody and you say, wow, you have A, B,
Yeah.
C. And
Right.
then you tell them, and I'm sure they're surprised. And they're like, really? You see that in me? You know? So I think it's that. I think it's very important to know your strengths, to know what really triggers you, that doesn't allow you to get past that moment.
So true. Those emotional triggers will get us every time.
Oh, yeah.
And every time it happens, it's just one more sort of moment for us to learn, like, oh, it's still coming around. I haven't learned the lesson
Yeah.
yet.
I thought I had this down, right?
It hooked me one more time, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
it's an area we know that we haven't healed from yet. So we really need to pay attention. And that's where the clarity and the awareness comes in. That's so important.
Yeah.
You mentioned being overwhelmed, Dr. Patty. So, what are some tools you can share with us to help us when we are just like oversaturated with stress? Because I know for a fact that lowers our tolerance for resilience. Basically, we're not very resilient when we're just oversaturated.
So I think one of the things that we should always, have in the forefront is really being good to ourselves,
Mm.
right?
Self-care.
Self-care and self-compassion. We have to forgive ourselves. And so Self-care is very important. I think that we need to do those things that we find are really good for ourselves. For me, and I alluded to that, like some of the things I need to do for myself, and I encourage everybody to do. We do a list, right? We do a list of those things that we need for ourselves. For instance, what I need every morning is silence. I swear that's how I function in the morning. So how do I accomplish that? I have a house full, with two teenagers. So and a husband. And a dog. And so I'm like, okay, so how do I get silence? I have to wake up much earlier.
Right.
Right. And so I go ahead and I sit, and that's my moment for myself to have meditation. And and I tell people that, and they're like, oh my God, I can't meditate. My thoughts, how can I do that? It's so crazy, and it's just start 5 minutes. Just start 5 minutes in
Right.
silence. And it's okay. And if the thoughts come, welcome the thoughts. Don't go against them. Just welcome them and let them go. Kind of like the ocean coming in and coming out. Just let them go.
Yeah,
Or
like watching the clouds
yeah,
just
or
passing
watching the
by.
clouds.
Yeah.
Or some people that are really type A, I tell them like think of it as a folder and file it, right?
Mm,
The thought, a folder, and file it, and then you can go back to it. So meditation. So for me, I have to do that in the morning, and I know that when I don't do that, my day just is not the same.
I agree.
It's not the same. And so I think being optimistic, while yet being realistic, right? Because we have to be within,
True.
um, the reality of life. But there's nothing wrong with being positive, and looking at things, like we were saying, this is, cleaning out my space, cleaning out my closet, taking away those people that aren't good for me, right? So being optimistic is very important. Looking for your strengths, setting goals. I think, you want to reduce stress, you want to reduce, overwhelm. Set your goals. What are my intentions for today? Simple. And it could be something like, my intention for today is not to get upset when this colleague approaches
Right.
me. That's my intention, right?
That's it.
That's
Just
it.
one
That's
thing.
all I want. Simple, simple, easy
Keep it
peasy.
simple.
Keep it simple, you know, and it really makes a difference if you wake up in the morning and you do that. Gratitude. That's why I
Gratitude. I was
love.
about to say, absolutely.
Oh my God, I love that question because gratitude, it's so easy. You just wake up, and I do this every morning. I try to do it. And when you're hectic, I'll just do one thing. I woke up this morning. I'm thankful for this, right? But it's good, and even at night, if you journal, if people like to journal, if you could write down maybe three things that you're grateful for at the end of the day, it's really powerful and amazing. So those are things, and always go back to living with purpose and taking action. Being empowered to do those things that you need to do for yourself and for your family. I think are very, very important.
100%.
Yeah.
Going back to the gratitude, one of the things I tell my clients is that, we're all always grateful for, I have, I feel grateful for my home, my family, my health, but to really get down to the nitty gritty
Yeah.
of gratitude, just those things, because when we start to pay attention and put our focus on those very specific things, all of a sudden we start to see, darn, my life is so abundant. And
Yeah.
we focus on the things that are working and thriving as opposed to criticizing everything that went wrong in that day. So, and I
Absolutely.
love doing it as you suggested before bed because it puts us in a great state right before
Yeah.
hitting, our head hits the pillow
Yeah.
and we don't go to bed with all of our thoughts and difficulties and worries and fears, which then we wake up with the next morning.
Right. Or those things that I wasn't able to accomplish, right? Or those things
Absolutely.
that failed, today. And I think a lot of it has also to do with being mindful, right?
Mm,
Living mindfully. And I tell my patients and my clients, I tell them all the time because they're like, oh, mindful, what are you talking about? What is this
yeah.
mindfulness, right? I'm like, just being present with everything, right? Because when you're in the present moment, you are not thinking about the past, which is what creates sadness, right? Because if I think about what I failed, it creates guilt, it creates, me feeling bad about myself, perhaps some
Resentment.
shame,
Yeah.
resentment. And if I'm thinking about the future, that creates anxiety, right? What am I going to do tomorrow? What are they going to think? How is this going to turn out? What is that going to happen? You stop it. You stop it by being in the present moment and just taking 5 minutes, even if your day is out of control, 5 minutes. That's all
Right.
it takes. Take a deep breath, 5 minutes, you know, touch the floor, look for a color, easy things that you can do, everything that's yellow in the office, or you go for a walk, which would be amazing if you can do
Yes.
that, right? And then just, start picking out the colors or feeling your feet on the pavement, just listening for the birds, using
Yes.
your senses, right? That
So
takes away
important.
the stress. Oh, it's phenomenal.
I'm going to tell you one of the things that I do for mindfulness because for whatever reason, I grew up in a family. All four of us, my mom, my dad, my sister, and I, were very quick eaters. We
Mm,
eat very quickly. And so, something that I've made a point, I would say, even in this last year, is to just slow down and
it's wonderful.
eat and really taste my food and smell it and just see the colors on the plate, whether I ordered it from a place or I made it myself. And that has been such a game changer for me, believe it or not, just slowing that process down. And I'm sure my gut appreciates it just
No,
the
yeah.
same.
And even for weight loss, like, or maintaining your weight, because when you're mindful when you're eating, you're actually allowing the enzymes, right? They're breaking down the food in your mouth.
Right.
They're sending the signal to the GI sending it to the brain and saying, hey, guess what? You're full. Stop.
Stop.
Right? Stop. You need to continue eating. But when we're like eating or watching TV, which is another terrible thing that you should never
Yes.
do, right? Or, or on your phone, you don't realize that you're eating, how much you're eating. And so being mindful, because the way you described it was beautiful, you're looking at the colors and the smells, but it really helps you with your digestive system, and it helps you with not overeating,
Yeah.
you know.
There's so many things that we can do like that. And I think as women, you probably agree, and as moms, we're doing like 50 things at once and doing it successfully, mind you,
Yeah.
but it doesn't help us be in the present moment. We're cooking, we're on the, maybe texting a friend in between, whatever. We're always busy. And so I think the more we can do activities that put us
Mhm.
in just focusing on that present moment, it's a beautiful thing.
Mhm.
So, Dr. Patty, one of the questions that all my guests get asked at the end of the interview is, what has been a moment of clarity in your life and what did it teach you?
I think most recently was probably COVID.
Hmm.
Um, it was a moment of clarity. It was actually, it was kind of interesting because, as you know, I work at a hospital, and everybody was complaining about it's funny how life works, right? Everybody was complaining about being, in lockdown and being home, and I had to leave every morning to go to the hospital every single morning, leave my family. And at the beginning it was really scary. We didn't know what was going on,
I
and
bet.
I had to strip in the garage and all that stuff. And I just kept saying, will somebody just send me home? I want to be quarantined with my family.
I want to be home with them.
you know and it was it was really interesting how everybody's perception of what's going on.
Right.
And so I really think the clarity moment that came, it's just learning to appreciate those moments we have, that we were, and I think it was just a world, right? It was just going on so crazy. Everybody was
Mm.
just on the go, 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 go. And when everything stopped and everybody was home, and even though I was going to work, there was no traffic, I would get to work in like 10 minutes.
Right.
And so everything stopped, and I remember we live on the water, we live on a canal in the water on the bay, and I remember we started seeing dolphins coming in the
Wow.
back. And so I said, this is such a wonderful thing for Earth and for us, for everyone. And I just thought, from now on, you know, I want us, and I would tell my children too, my boys, which of course are like, okay, mom, shut up already. Um, we really have to enjoy these times that we're able to
Yeah.
be together. And so we took out the board games, we started playing Monopoly, and of course, all hell broke loose because none of my boys can lose. So uh, but it was really wonderful to spend that family time together. So now we're making it a point to try to do, every week
To
have
continue.
have a family night.
Wonderful.
So I think that was really the moment of clarity, because our kids grow so fast, and
So fast.
that before you know it they're gone. And so really enjoy those little moments. It's so important.
My
And
daughter just graduated on Saturday from high school, and
congratulations.
it was, thank you, it was such
Thank
an
you.
emotional thing, and I saw her walk across the stage, and I was like, "But she just did that in kindergarten." It felt like months ago, years ago, and
I
it was
know.
just such a long time, but it went by so quickly.
Oh my gosh.
And she's off to college now. She's going to stay local here in South Florida, so I'm happy about that. I get to
Good for
keep her
you.
around a
You
little
get to keep
longer.
it a little longer. Yeah.
Absolutely. And share those moments together, because now she's at a stage where it's great. We have a lot of really great conversations. So it's important to enjoy our children
Yeah.
every little step of the way and every age group that they're at, because each one, I think, brings something special.
And it does.
Yeah.
And I learned that because when I had my daughter, you have this child and you're like, "Oh, I can't wait till she sits up. And then
Yeah. Right.
she starts walking, you know. And when I had my son, I'm a little bit older now, and I'm thinking, no, I want to enjoy every single moment.
Yeah.
And if we could just really do that, right? If we knew that, it would be so amazing, when we have our first child, that just to enjoy every single moment. I remember one of my mother's friends, she was so they tend to tell you, at least in Hispanic families, they tend to tell you, don't carry the baby too much because you're going
Yeah.
to spoil them, or
I've heard
don't
that.
rock them that much because you're going to spoil them. And I remember she said to me, she said, you know what, Patty, you carry that baby as much as you want. You rock that baby as much as you want, because I have yet to see a 25-year-old get home, sit on the mother's lap, and have her rock him to sleep.
Yeah, that's
So,
hilarious. True.
best advice I ever had. And it's so true. We're all worried about, we don't want, no, hug your baby,
No.
hug your daughter, give her kisses. My son he's 15 now, and he's like, okay, mom, kiss. And I'm like, I don't care. You're still mine.
Come
And I kiss
here.
him whether he likes it or not. And, it's just, and I'm sure he'll tell terrible stories when he's older about how his mother made him kiss him. But that's okay.
Or
I'll take
embarrassed him,
therapy later.
right? They get embarrassed very easily at that age. So
Yeah.
I always like to end with something kind of fun, and that's what I call the recommended segment. So I'm going to give you, Dr. Patty, 4 different categories, and you're going to tell me just something you recommend in each.
Okay.
Pretty simple. So we're going to start with a goodie called Netflix. Is there
Oh my
anything you're
goodness.
watching now that you recommend?
Binging when COVID. So don't hate me, Lucifer.
Okay,
I love
haven't
his
heard that one.
devilish. Oh my god, his devilish charm. He's like the devil, but it's really funny, and it's the good side, like how he tries to be good. It's I
Okay.
love I love the whole thing. It's really funny, and the money heist. I love the Spanish money heist.
Yes, that was Spanish. It's called Casa de Papel.
Casa de Papel.
Yeah,
Love, love,
I
love.
think they're bringing it back for
They are. They're
another
doing another
season.
season. I can't wait.
A
So
lot
I
of shows are coming back now, thanks to, the restrictions being a little bit less. All
yeah.
right. So a product that you recommend, it could be any kind of product for
Right.
anything.
Okay, so I'm obsessed with skincare.
Hmm.
Obsessed. So vitamin C. I love
Okay.
vitamin
Serum.
C. Serum. I think everybody should use it. I've tried many vitamin C's. I like SkinCeutical is my favorite.
Skin suit. I've heard of them.
It's
Yes.
expensive. It's
Yeah.
expensive. But you
But
only need a little bit. Just a
that's
little
the
bit.
good part about it.
Oh my
A
god,
few drops will go a long way, and
it's
they have
amazing.
great results, and it fights free
Yeah.
radicals, right? On your
That's the thing.
face,
And so
protects you.
right. So I'd rather spend money on things that I know that are scientifically proven, and vitamin C is one of those things. Retin
Absolutely.
A and vitamin C, those are the only two. Everything else, you're wasting money.
What about a book?
Oh my gosh. So I'm reading this. You Are a Badass.
Ooh, yes, I've seen that. I haven't read it, but I've seen it advertised.
Oh my god, it's really funny. She is actually a coach, and she's hysterical. It's a very easy to read book. It goes by really fast. You're a badass. And
Tell
so
me
I
the name of the author, because
her
that
name
way,
is Jen Sincero.
Jen Sincero. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Love, love,
I'll
love.
add that to our podcast toolkit. And
Yeah,
then
she was on the New York Times bestseller list for like I don't know how long.
an IG account other than your own that everyone should follow.
Yours, of
Oh,
course.
well, other than mine and yours. Thank you.
I like the Tahini Goddess.
And
So
what
what
does she
she does,
focus
so
on?
she has like products that she sells, but not because of that. She does a lot of plant-based recipes.
Mm.
And she's local. She's here from South Florida, and she's amazing. Like she makes you want to eat vegetables.
Oh, cool.
She cooks them as she does a lot of Mediterranean. So she'll do like endives and all this stuff with tahini
Mm.
dressing. It's delicious.
Tahini Goddess. All right.
Yeah.
Check her out. Dr. Patty, any parting words before we sign off for today's podcast?
No, I think this is wonderful. I'm so happy that I was able to be in your podcast today, and I wish everybody to have resilience
Absolutely.
in
Thank you. I
everything.
think this has
Yeah,
been the year and a half almost of that. And I think we're all going to come out stronger on the end. And thank you so much for the work you do with your patients and on your IG account, which is, I have it here, Dr. Patty, MD. And I wish you the best. Thank you so much for being here today.
my pleasure. Thank you, Jeanette.
So I hope that this podcast episode has sparked the insight within. For more on Dr. Patty, as you just heard, you can follow her on Instagram at Dr. Patty MD, or you can also check out her website at www.drpattymd.com. And for the podcast toolkit for this episode, you can head over to my website at JeanetteMelian.com and click on the podcast tab. Until next time, I send you love and light. May your cup be full and overflowing.